Hey, it's me, your favorite Opus Dei conspiracy theorist, back with another Opus Dei deep dive video.
I think my own idealism as a Catholic teenager was very much about converting the world to Catholicism. And Opus Dei presented itself to me as the most modern and vibrant way to go about that.
Interesting.
That's probably how I stayed in so long, because that ran deep, and also out of a sense of commitment and loyalty, even though at another level there were a lot of doubts being raised.
And that's where the light bulbs went on and said, wait a minute, there's something profound here about the human mind and how we can be influenced consciously and unconsciously by people in our environment, especially authority figures we give credit to, the people we think are legitimate authority figures, but we gauge a lot by the people we're around who are in the same group, especially people, if we like them or we can identify with them, they're us, we're going to follow more often than not. So I think the numbers are about 2/3 of everybody will conform.
If you saw the video that I posted last week sometime, you know that I have been struggling with where to film, how to film, living full-time in an RV with an air conditioner and animals and so on and so forth. And so I have moved myself to our little office in the back of the trailer. I've erected this lovely piece of blue fabric, which I inadvertently matched my outfit to, and I'm hoping that if I speak with a loud enough volume in my tone, I can try to drown out the sound of the air conditioner, which I am sure you are still going to be able to hear. I have lit myself as well as I can possibly light myself without lighting myself on fire, and we are just going to push ahead because you've got to be able to roll with the punches, and at this point I don't know what else to do. I can't lock myself away in a soundproof studio as much as I might like to. Before we get into the topic for today's video, which I am very excited to be presenting, I want to do a little bit of a show and tell for some of the resources that I've been using to formulate my opinion and deepen my understanding of Opus Dei. I think it's important, if you are really going to research something, that you not just limit yourself to the information that is out there for free on the internet. Not to say that there's anything wrong with that, because the internet is a wealth of information and you can find plenty, but I think you should be willing to have a little bit of skin in the game and put a little bit of money down, and that's what I've done. And I have these 3 books here that I've been going through. I am halfway and 1/3 of the way through 2 of them, and I haven't even started the other one. But I chose these books for a very specific reason, because I thought that these 3 books would give me a well-rounded understanding of Opus Dei, because they come from 3 distinct perspectives. The first book is a very well-known book by John L. Allen Jr. called Opus Dei, and from my understanding it is just a broad but comprehensive breakdown of Opus Dei. From the little bit that I have skimmed through it, the font is very tiny, there's plenty of information, but he kind of just goes over Opus Dei as a whole without getting too exhaustively into the details. I haven't started on this book yet, but I'm excited to. I think that it's really going to just reconfirm everything that I've already learned, and it'll just be a very factual read, which I think is important. I think presenting the facts about this organization and everything that they have going on is key when it comes to combating the issues within the organization. So, Opus Dei by John L. Allen. I will let you know whenever I start reading it what I think of it, but I think it's going to be good. The second book, I chose this book very purposefully. I knew exactly what it was going to be when I got it. It has been painful to read, but it is Women of Opus Dei in their own words. And I thought, what better way to get information about Opus Dei but from the horse's mouth? And I gotta tell you, I got exactly what I thought I was going to get. This thing is very easy to read. It's not very deep. It's a whole collection of stories and interviews from women who have dedicated their lives to Opus Dei as numeraries, supernumeraries, and numerary assistants, basically waxing eloquent about how wonderful Opus Dei is, how it has helped them lead more fulfilling lives, yada 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 yada. It is pure propaganda. It is like reading a recruitment pamphlet for Opus Dei, and I am halfway through it. I have been writing notes in the margin. I mean, I bought these books. These aren't library books, so I feel like I can write in the margins if I really need to. It's interesting because it's a perfect illustration of the kind of people that are drawn to Opus Dei, and it perfectly illustrates the fact that Opus Dei really, really wants you to believe that it is for everyone and that it is very, very woman positive. Of course, from printing to binding, this entire thing is approved by Opus Dei, so you will not find one dissenting word about the organization. Every single interview is perfectly set up so that there are questions about some of the controversies sprinkled in there, and these members are very quick to dispute them and then move right along. I know that that was done intentionally, but like I said, I wanted to read this book and really get it from the horse's mouth. Like I said, I'm halfway through it, maybe a little bit more than halfway, and I need to finish it, but to be honest, it was just so saccharine and ridiculous that I needed to take a break. And so I moved on to my third and final book, and this book, out of the three so far, is my absolute favorite. It is the very well-known Inside Opus Dei by Maria del Carmen Tapia, who was a member of Opus Dei for 18 years, and she joined Opus Dei back when the organization was still in its infancy in Spain, before it became a personal prelature, before it even had its constitutions and bylaws written out. She was really on the front lines of the organization growing and moving and taking over the Catholic world, as it were. And so her perspective is incredibly valuable, and she gives an awesome insight into what it was like to be a woman in Opus Dei back when the organization was really just starting to take off. I am about a third of the way through it, and the only reason it's taking me as long as it is because the book is surprisingly readable is the fact that I have been taking the time to really make sure I digest. I've been highlighting things that have stuck out to me, not because I have any intention to really present the information at any point or another, but it's just that I want to make sure that I'm really digesting and integrating into my brain the things that she is saying. The book is incredibly well written, very, very easy to read, very interesting, and I highly recommend it. But these three books are the books that I have been reading, along with all of my internet research and the various sources, anonymous individuals that have been reaching out to me and talking to me. This is what I have been using to inform my opinion, and I think that it's really helped a lot. It has reconfirmed for me the things that I had already thought, and it has also just helped me deepen my understanding, which is important to me because I want to be able to make eloquent, well-informed videos for you guys, especially about something which is as controversial as this seems to be. And with that said, I want to go ahead and get into today's topic. I chose to wait to make this type of video about Opus Dei, even though I've had this thought in the back of my mind from the very beginning. Opus Dei has been accused of being a cult by many, many people throughout the years, and they have refuted it time and time again, as they are wont to do. But I knew that eventually this was going to be something that I would be touching on, and I wanted to wait, kind of go over Opus Dei as a whole first, so that we could kind of get an understanding of what exactly it is that we're dealing with, what exactly Opus Dei is, how people feel about it, so on and so forth. And I think that we have done that to some degree, and that this is the right time to have this conversation, to ask ourselves whether or not Opus Dei is a cult. And based off of the information that I have, sources that I have, I think that we can form a very well-educated opinion on the matter. When I first started researching for this topic, I knew that I wanted to use some sort of model, and I had in my mind that I would use the BITE model, which is the most widely accepted model for breaking down and understanding and analyzing whether or not an organization, religious or otherwise, is in fact a cult. There are other models out there, more, but the BITE model is the most well-known and the most popular. It's actually an acronym that stands for Behavior Control, Information Control, Thought Control, and Emotion Control. And based on whether or not an organization meets so many wickets within that acronym, you can really kind of conclude whether or not that organization is in fact a cult or just has some cult-like tendencies. The BITE model was created by a gentleman named Steven Hassan, who himself was a member and survivor of the very infamous Moonies cult. And so if there's anyone who really has an understanding of how cults work and operate, it's going to be somebody who was on the inside and then has come out on the other side of all of that and has used their experiences to try to help other people. Luckily for me, it turns out that Steven Hassan had already done a lot of the legwork for me when it came to researching all this and gathering information, because as it turns out, sometime last year he interviewed a woman named Eileen Johnson, who was a member of Opus Dei for 11 years, and they talked about Opus Dei's practices, treatment of their members, member behavior, and whether or not Opus Dei is a cult. And the soundbite that you heard at the beginning of this video is actually a clip from one of those interviews, and I will link that and Steven Hassan's webpage down below, because I picked bits and pieces from that interview and from that webpage to present in this video. But I highly recommend that you go and watch the interview in its entirety and read through that webpage, because there is a wealth of information there that I knew I wouldn't have time to present all of in this video, and he does a really good job of making a very strong argument. I want to give just a brief overview of that interview between Steven Hassan and Eileen Johnson, and then we will go into some of the key points within the BITE model and how Opus Dei stacks up against them. So, as I already said, Eileen Johnson was a member of Opus Dei for 11 years. She claims that she was actually groomed by her French teacher, who befriended her and invited her to go to an international girls' conference in Manchester under the guise of improving her French. And Eileen really loved French. It was her absolute favorite language, and she was really excited about the opportunity to go somewhere with someone that she trusted and be in an environment where she could deepen her understanding of the language. Of course, little did she know at the time that her French teacher was in fact a member of Opus Dei, and that of course the retreat was an Opus Dei run event. It's interesting to note that the concept of grooming is usually applied to trafficking situations, but I don't think that it's entirely inaccurate in this situation either, because Eileen was purposefully targeted by someone that she trusted. The person got her to let her guard down, feel comfortable and relaxed, and then placed Eileen in an environment where she was primed for the picking to be recruited into Opus Dei. When all of this began, Eileen was just 17 years old, and when she was inevitably recruited into Opus Dei, first as a supernumerary but then eventually as a celibate numerary, Opus Dei told her not to tell her parents, which is something that we have heard from ex-members time and time again. Plenty of people have said that despite what Opus Dei says to the public, they were told not to tell their parents or to answer evasively any questions their families have about Opus Dei. She claims that Opus Dei uses coercion to encourage their members to embrace their vocation to the celibate numerary life, which is something that, again, we have seen time and time again, ex-members speaking out and saying that they were approached by these people within Opus Dei, telling them that they had a vocation to Opus Dei, and telling them that they had to answer the call, otherwise they would be sinning against God. Eileen said that she stuck with Opus Dei out of a sense of commitment and loyalty to Opus Dei ideals. She talks about Opus Dei's strong belief in blind obedience, which was actually a tenet of Escriva's and something that he talked about on more than one occasion. She cites the practice of having numeraries sleep on wooden planks in lieu of a mattress as very difficult and very real sleep deprivation. Eileen said in the interview that Opus Dei's lying to the public is one of the most harmful things about Opus Dei. She refers to a story about a former member of Opus Dei who had been a chauffeur for Escriva, and this is actually a story that I had found somewhere else while I was doing some research, but Eileen actually interviewed the man who went through all of this. It was a man named Miguel who was a member of Opus Dei, a personal chauffeur for Escriva for many years, knew him very well, and eventually he ended up leaving Opus Dei, got married, and had children. Tragically, his youngest daughter died in infancy, and when she did, 2 Opus Dei priests visited him at his home and told him that his daughter's death was God's punishment for him leaving Opus Dei. Eileen took this story and sent it to a Scottish newspaper, and when the headlines came out, Opus Dei issued a statement saying that it was a false story, basically calling Miguel a crazy liar. However, Miguel was able to prove that it happened because he knew the names of the 2 Opus Dei priests and the date and time that they had visited him. And from what we understand about Opus Dei's mode of operation and the strict control that they keep over their members, there's absolutely no way that Opus Dei did not know that those priests had visited him. In this case, they were caught in a very blatant and obvious lie, and it really makes you wonder how many other things they have lied about and have never gotten caught when it comes to their public relations and the information that they give out. It's also worth noting that distorting the truth and lying about factual events is nothing new for Opus Dei. Escriva himself liked to distort facts, especially scripture, so that he could use scripture verses in a way to manipulate the people following him and use them to kind of prop himself and what he was doing up. Opus Dei has also liked to lie about their history, and in the book by Tapia, there is a portion where she talks about when Opus Dei was writing Escriva's biographies and how they were only allowed to write about the good, positive things about Escriva and none of the negative things, of which there were several of note, but of course those were ignored and washed over in the interest of preserving the image of Opus Dei. And as we know very well from all of the research that we've done, the past videos, Opus Dei is very, very preoccupied with their public image. They want to ensure that they appear snow white and clean to the eyes of everyone, regardless of what is happening behind closed doors. Due to Opus Dei's gaslighting, Eileen began to suffer some pretty serious psychological distress. She went through a period of very serious depression while she was within Opus Dei, and so of course Opus Dei sent her to a psychologist. But it was an Opus Dei psychologist, and unfortunately the psychologist failed her absolutely miserably and violated several ethical guidelines while Eileen was under their care. Once again, Opus Dei places the health of the organization over the health of its individual members, and due to the isolation and information control that Opus Dei exercises over its members, Eileen believed that she was the problem and that she was the only one experiencing the things that she was going through, even though she now realizes, as most of us do, that she was in fact not the only one and that what she was experiencing is actually very, very common. This is classic gaslighting and classic manipulation, and it's a tactic that cults are very, very fond of using. Luckily, after 11 years, Eileen was able to leave Opus Dei and get the proper psychological help that she needed, and it seems from all intents and purposes that she is leading a very fulfilling and happy life. She has spoken at a few different conferences about her experience in Opus Dei and about cults, and she said at the beginning of her interview with Stephen Hassan that she is in the process of writing a book, which should be out within the next couple of years, and I know that I can say that I would be very interested in reading that if and when it does in fact come out. So that's just a little bit of an overview of the interview. Now let's get into the bite model and Opus Dei. We're going to go point by point, and I pulled these examples off of Stephen Hassan's webpage. So the first part of the bite model is behavior control, and there is the regulation of individuals' physical realities within Opus Dei, the where, how, and with whom the member lives and associates within Opus Dei centers, being encouraged to only have friends with people who might be recruited into Opus Dei, and then once those people are recruited, being told that they can no longer have friendships with these people because personal friendships within Opus Dei are absolutely forbidden. And why not? Because if people can maintain those friendships and have strong bonds to anyone other than the organization, they might eventually put their heads together and realize that they're being gaslit and that they need to get out. There's also the sleep deprivation, like we mentioned before, sleeping on wood planks without a mattress, being required to sleep without a pillow on one night of the week, and an all-night vigil one night of the month where members must sign up to pray a 2-hour slot at some point during the night, which you have to imagine you're already having trouble sleeping, you're having to sleep on these wooden planks, especially if it's in the winter time. It's going to be absolutely miserable, and now on top of it you have to get up and go pray somewhere for 2 hours out of your night. Your sleep schedule is going to be an absolute disaster, and that's going to affect your overall mental health and your ability to process and understand what is happening around you. There's financial dependence, something that I figured was probably going on, but I really didn't know too much about. But one member was required to cancel their credit card, and if they had remained in Opus Dei for more than 5 years, they would have been required to sign over any inheritance that they received. And of course, individualism is discouraged and groupthink prevails. Individualism is always referred to as just selfishness. And then moving on to the eye and bite information control, there's the use of deception, deliberately withholding information, i.e. not being forthcoming with potential members about the financial control, sleeping on wooden planks, taking cold showers, or being required to get rid of personal mementos. They're not allowed to keep anything that will remind them of their life before or outside of Opus Dei. Opus Dei centers will control critical information. They screen ingoing and outgoing mail, any information that they deem would be a distraction to Opus Dei members. So that could include anything from a sickness in the family to the death of a relative. Information is not freely accessible because, quote, it would be dangerous to one's vocation to read anything critical to their Catholic faith or Opus Dei vocation. It would be considered an occasion of sin. Just having free access to information, being able to critically analyze what's going on, being able to ask critical questions would be seen as an occasion of sin. And then the last that I have listed here, and this one just really got me, members are encouraged to spy on each other in the form of fraternal correction, and all information is given to the directors. So there is absolutely zero privacy, and there's a feeling of always being watched. Moving on to thought control, there's the need to internalize the group's doctrine as truth. The truth, as expounded by Opus Dei, is believed, and members become like puppets in the hands of the directors. There's very black and white thinking within Opus Dei. If you obey the directors, you're doing the will of God. If you live according to the spirit of Opus Dei, you are doing the will of God. Anything else is seen as bad spirit. There's also the use of loaded language, a technique designed to further constrict rather than expand critical thinking. A common thought-terminating cliche is, they will not understand, which is something that new members are told to tell their family members anytime questions arise about Opus Dei. They are told to tell their families they simply cannot understand Opus Dei, that Opus Dei's ways are just out of their reach, that they just would not understand, and that essentially shuts down any further conversation, productive conversation that could be had about this organization that these parents' children are becoming involved in at way too young of ages most of the time. No alternative belief system is seen as good or legitimate or useful. There is only the way, and all other orders within the Catholic Church are looked at questionably. So it's not even that Opus Dei is saying, hey, you can't be a Freemason, hey, you can't be a Shriner, hey, you can't be a Boy Scout. They're saying, no, you can't even join any of the other organizations within the Catholic Church. No one has it figured out but us. No one has the information but us. No one can show you how to get to heaven and save your soul but us. And that essentially allows Opus Dei to maintain a tight control over the members that they have underneath of them and ensure that they are not going anywhere anytime soon, because most of these members are very good Catholic people who are primarily preoccupied with saving their souls and trying to get to heaven. And lastly, we have emotion control. There is, of course, the gaslighting, which is incredibly common, happens all the time, and drives me up a wall. Gaslighting is my least favorite thing. I absolutely hate it. I've been gaslit in relationships, I've been gaslit in friendships, I've been gaslit by religion. It sucks, and it's something that happens way too often, and a lot of the time the really sinister thing about it is that you don't realize that you were gaslit until you're on the outside looking back in, which is what has happened so many times with Opus Dei. Members are constantly under pressure that they are not living up to their full potential. One ex-member described being told by an Opus Dei priest that if one passed a piece of lint on the carpet and did not pick it up, it was a sin because they did not take the opportunity to offer that act up to God. There's forced alienation from family. Members are forced to distance from blood relatives. They are told that, quote, Opus Dei is your family, and are made to feel guilty about spending time with blood relatives because it takes away time from their vocation and their real work and what they're doing that has real value within Opus Dei. Nothing else outside of Opus Dei matters. It is all about the organization. The organization is the pie in the sky, and everything else is inconsequential. I already mentioned once before that members are not allowed to keep any mementos or photos or anything to remind them of their past life or their life outside of Opus Dei. That is forced alienation from everything that made up who they were before Opus Dei came into their lives. And there is the excessive use of fear. Fear of thinking independently, fear of the quote-unquote outside world, because safety is inside Opus Dei, and the devil is always trying to tempt members through strangers on the outside world. The only safe, secure place is within Opus Dei. There is the fear of losing one's salvation constantly. Numerators are often told that they will be damned if they leave Opus Dei. Terrible consequences would ensue for those who left, including excommunication from the Catholic Church. I'm not even 100% sure if Opus Dei can do that, because excommunication is a really, really big deal. But the fact of the matter is, if a member has been within this organization for so long, they have completely lost the ability to think critically for themselves, and so they probably don't even realize that this is a flat-out lie. Opus Dei likes to say that their members are free to come and go and free to leave at any time they choose. They've said this on multiple occasions to the public, but the fact of the matter is, what Opus Dei really means is that its members are free to go to hell. And if that doesn't speak volumes of the type of control that Opus Dei exercises over its members, then I don't know what does. So those are just a few examples of the BITE model and how it applies to Opus Dei. But like I said, there are many more on Stephen Hassan's website. And I think that all in all, when you look at the entirety of the picture of what Opus Dei is and everything that they do, everything that they require of their members, it's pretty difficult to deny the fact that there are some very strong cult-like tendencies within this organization. And I don't have any problem considering this organization a religious cult. I don't think that that is far-fetched or out of the question or just so terribly crazy. And when I was writing this outline, I had some thoughts come to me, and I ended up jotting them down because I think they're important. They're important to this conversation, especially when it comes to talking to people who would defend Opus Dei and who would try to justify the things that Opus Dei has done. I think it's worth noting that there are people who truly do have a calling to service in religious life. They're called to deny themselves certain things in order to serve a particular religious ideal or deity. That does happen. That is not uncommon. However, this decision is usually made after that person has had a chance to thoroughly examine their life and whether or not it is the right choice. And they are always of legal age when they do so. Not only that, but they know going in what exactly it is that they're getting themselves into. If a woman joins a cloistered convent, she knows that she's going into an environment where she will have little to no contact with the outside world, including her family. If a monk decides to go and live in a monastery somewhere, he knows that he's probably going to be spending the majority of the time tending to a garden and praying. That is a lifestyle that these people are attracted to, and they go into it with the full knowledge of what it is that they're going to be doing. They have that information. Opus Dei is supposed to offer a way for ordinary people to live extraordinary lives while still living out in the world and having a regular existence. Yet time and time again, we see examples of Opus Dei placing insane restrictions on its members in order for this to be accomplished. Among its many other tactics, this is especially troubling to me because it shows a concentrated effort on Opus Dei's part to deprive its members of free will. Without the ability to truly exercise free will, a person's life and actions will be little better than those of a slave. And if Opus Dei truly wanted to lead people to heaven through ordinary life, surely it would recognize how important free will is in all of that. Of course, the obvious answer in all of this is that we know very well at this point that Opus Dei does not give two sticks about whether or not its members go to heaven. And that's not its mission whatsoever. That's just the front that it puts on so that it can carry on its actual intentions behind the scenes unencumbered and unbothered. There is this sort of unspoken understanding and respect that people have towards religious organizations, that there are things going on that are just beyond our ability to comprehend because of the nature of religion, and so we tend to not question those things too heavily until it's too late. I don't know why it is, but out of all of the videos that I have made about Opus Dei, the very first video that I ever made has done the best. And I don't know if it's the thumbnail or the title or what, but it has gotten the most views and the most attention and the most comments, the majority of which are in 100% support of what I am doing. But of course, sprinkled throughout there are people who are trying to defend Opus Dei and justify the organization's actions. It's interesting to me that those same people are not popping up in later videos that I've made about Opus Dei's human rights violations, its sex abuse crisis, or its very odd relationship with the Vatican. They're strangely silent in those situations, but they have plenty to say when I was pointing out problematic figures who have been in Opus Dei or giving a brief overview of Opus Dei. I've been called a conspiracy theorist for simply presenting facts. I've been told that I am lying and that the information that I am presenting is false, even though within the description of these videos, I always cite my sources. And I'm doing that very intentionally. I want people to go and click on those links and read those things for themselves. I want them to question things for themselves. I don't want anyone to take what I am saying at face value and just go on their merry way. Please do your own research and ask your own questions, because I think that's vitally important when it comes to educating people and helping people and getting people to wake up. Of course, I'm not making these videos with the intention of targeting current current members of Opus Dei. Based off of everything that we've gone over in this video, I understand that Opus Dei's control over the people who are going to be the loudest in support of the organization is such that those people are never going to see the light of day when it comes to any of this stuff. They will rationalize it or ignore it because that's the kind of environment that Opus Dei has created around these people. But I would be lying if I didn't acknowledge that it's a little bit frustrating to have somebody calling me a conspiracy theorist and a liar without taking into account where I'm getting my information and where that information came from to begin with, how it came into existence to begin with. And so that is it for this video. Is Opus Dei a cult? I would say yes. I think there's a very strong case to be made for that. There are organizations that have cult-like tendencies, and then there are organizations that are cults. And I think it's very important to be able to differentiate between the two. And in this case, in my opinion, Opus Dei is a religious cult, and I think that there are more and more people beginning to realize that. Stephen Hassan has picked up on that fact, Eileen Johnson is speaking out about that fact, and it'll be interesting to see over the next several years, I'm sure it'll take a very, very, very long time, just how this thing evolves and grows and how loud these voices speaking out about Opus Dei can get. I personally would really like to see a day of reckoning for Opus Dei, just for the sake of the victims and the people who have been put through some really horrific things as a result of their involvement. So that is it for now. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Please give it a thumbs up if you did, and subscribe if you haven't already. I really, really appreciate everybody's support. If you have any thoughts, leave a comment down below, or you can reach out to me. My email is in the description. I will keep you 100% anonymous. You can DM me, whatever the case may be. If you've had an experience with Opus Dei, or if you have a story, I would love to hear it. And if you don't want that story, never has to go any further than the two of us. Thank you so much for being here, everyone, and I hope that I will see you for the next video, whenever and wherever that may be. Bye, guys.